What's up, fight fans? John Bravo here. Welcome to my channel, The John Bravo Experiment. What we do here is we talk about MMA a lot, but I'm not afraid to talk about other things. But I talk mostly about fight sports and all the issues that pertain to that. It's my passion, it's my life, and it's the fastest, if not, it's one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing sport in the world right now, with the UFC being at the top, Bellator, One, Ryzen, the PFL, and a lot of other ones that are coming up. So it is the fastest growing. To me, it's the fastest growing sport in sports history. I mean, in 20 years, it's just taken leaps and bounds. So my goal for this channel is to create an open forum, a round table of sorts of fans, from you filthy casuals to you psychopath hardcores that have been, watching this from the beginning, just like myself. So I welcome all your opinions. Opinions are like assholes. We all have one, and I know all you assholes have opinions. And right now, my goal is going to be to bring you post-fight predictions, analysis, breakdowns, keys to the fight, and then post-fight results, reactions, and keys to the fight as well, win, lose, or draw. So what I'm saying is basically is I welcome all comments, all questions, and right at this moment I can pretty much promise that I'll be able to respond to all of them. If you see how many subs I have here and how new I am, I've got plenty of time, and I would love to talk to you. That's what this is all about. We now have more say over what happens in the UFC, at least, to create fights and be matchmakers than ever before. They listen to the tweets, the Twitches, the IGs, the FBs, the Grams, the same as I do, and they keep their I want to keep my finger on the pulse of the sport, so that I know the news, I know the reactions, I know the injuries, and I can take all of that information. I mean, there's over 1,000 fighters, I think, just alone in the UFC. Somewhere around 700, 500 or 600 in Bellator, which is the second promotion in MMA. So we've got a lot of information, and I scour the internet all day, all night. I watch fights that are 10 years old. I watch fights that are 6 months old. I watch this particular fight that I'm going to cover today, GAETHJE versus BARBOZA. I must have watched this fight. I must have watched the main card 6 times. So, I mean, that's just how I am. I don't do anything else. I watch it. I love it. And it's my passion. So that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to grow my channel with you guys. I scour the internet, and I basically, I obsess over this madness so that you guys don't have to. What I want to do is bring you, in the future, I want to have interviews, fighters, both amateur and pro, up and comers and well-established veterans. I'm in South Florida, where we now have Hard Knocks 360, ATT, several of them, the Black Zillions. A lot of fighters reside down here. A lot of fighters vacation down here. But then you've also got coaches, cutmen, doctors. I'm interested in all aspects that have to do with this particular life, you see. So what I'm saying is basically is I welcome all comments, all questions, and right at this moment I can pretty much promise that I'll be able to respond to all of them. If you see how many subs I have here and how new I am, I've got plenty of time, and I would love to talk to you. That's what this is all about. We now have more say over what happens in the UFC, at least, to create fights and be matchmakers than ever before. They listen to the tweets, the Twitches, the IGs, the FBs, the Grams, the same as I do, and they keep their, I want to keep my finger on the pulse of the sport so that I know the news, I know the reactions, I know the injuries, and I can take all of that information. I mean, there's over 1,000 fighters, I think, just alone in the UFC. Somewhere around 700, 500 or 600 in Bellator, which is the second promotion in MMA. So we've got a lot of information, and I scour the internet all day, all night. I watch fights that are 10 years old. I watch fights that are 6 months old. I watch this particular fight that I'm going to cover today, GAETHJE versus BARBOZA. I must have watched this fight. I must have watched the main card 6 times. So, I mean, that's just how I am. I don't do anything else. I watch it. I love it. And it's my passion. So that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to grow my channel with you guys. I scour the internet, and I basically, I obsess over this madness so that you guys don't have to. What I want to do is bring you, in the future, I want to have interviews, fighters, both amateur and pro, up and comers and well-established veterans. I'm in South Florida, where we now have Hard Knocks 360, ATT, several of them, the Black Zillions. A lot of fighters reside down here. A lot of fighters vacation down here. But then you've also got coaches, cutmen, doctors. I'm interested in all aspects that have to do with this particular life, you see. So what I'm saying is basically I welcome all comments, all questions, and right at this moment I can pretty much promise that I'll be able to respond to all of them. If you see how many subs I have here and how new I am, I've got plenty of time, and I would love to talk to you. That's what this is all about. We now have more say over what happens in the UFC, at least, to pair, to create fights and be matchmakers than ever before. They listen to the tweets, the Twitches, the IGs, the FBs, the Grams, the same as I do, and they keep their, I want to keep my finger on the pulse of the sport so that I know the news, I know the reactions, I know the injuries, and I can take all of that information. I mean, there's over 1,000 fighters, I think, just alone in the UFC. Somewhere around 700, 500 or 600 in Bellator, which is the second promotion in MMA. So we've got a lot of information, and I scour the internet all day, all night. I watch fights that are 10 years old. I watch fights that are 6 months old. I watch this particular fight that I'm going to cover today, GAETHJE versus BARBOZA. I must have watched this fight. I must have watched the main card 6 times. So, I mean, that's just how I am. I don't do anything else. I watch it. I love it. And it's my passion. So that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to grow my channel with you guys. I scour the internet, and I basically, I obsess over this madness so that you guys don't have to. What I want to do is bring you, in the future, I want to have interviews, fighters, both amateur and pro, up and comers and well-established veterans. I'm in South Florida, where we now have Hard Knocks 360, ATT, several of them, the Black Zillions. A lot of fighters reside down here. A lot of fighters vacation down here. But then you've also got coaches, cutmen, doctors. I'm interested in all aspects that have to do with this particular life, you see. The goal is to make an entertaining channel that we can all learn from and help to grow the sport together. And I promise it'll be fun, it'll be interesting, and we're all going to learn something from each other, as we can always do. No matter what the situation is, we can always learn from one another. That right there is free advice. So This particular episode is a little bit late, but it's going to be covering, as you can see in the background. I don't know if you can see it too well because the production is less than perfect where I am, being as how this is my first crack at being a producer. But as you can see in the back, the main card, the event was Barboza, Edson Jr. Barboza versus Justin the Highlight Gaethje. Justin and Barboza, for that matter, are two of the most exciting fighters that are in the UFC right now. But this particular card, it actually happened to have a lot more than the main event as far as entertainment value. I, for one, loved the way that this card worked out. If you looked at my last video, if you saw my predictions, I think I was 3 for 3. Okay, but I did tell you not to touch any of them. And so this isn't going to be, I don't analyze it enough for you to go ahead and bet your money on that. I'm going to go ahead and put that warning out there right now. I just go by what I feel and my heart. And so, as I said in my last video, my heart told me Gaethje was going to win that fight. Even though on paper, everywhere you looked, it was Edson Barboza's fight to win. I mean, he is by far the technical striker, more of a technical striker. They're both known for finishing guys with leg kicks, as I mentioned in my last video. And the fight was expected to have a lot of leg kicks. I mean, there was supposed to be a war, according to at least Edson Barboza, who was ready for a 25-minute war. Because he knows Justin Gaethje is a warrior. I mean, it just doesn't come any more warrior than him. So he knew that he was in for a fight, and he had to prepare himself for a war if that was to happen. Because Edson Barboza, let's face it, his resume is amazing. Okay, when he's been in a lot of wars, he's taken beatings. Okay, so his toughness, there's no question. Unless some of those beatings have withered his chin to a certain point, which tends to happen. But I don't know. He's still kind of young. But that beating he took from Khabib, for example, that was a bad beating he took. All right, so it's questionable. He's coming off of a win from Dan Hooker. Okay, I'm sure a lot of people looking at this video don't even know who that is. But he's a pretty good fighter. Nowhere near the caliber of fighter that Edson Barboza was, and Barboza did exactly what he was supposed to do. He finished him with a if I remember right, it was like a back leg kick to the midsection or a liver kick or something like that, because nobody kicks better than or faster. Nobody kicks better with more speed. And arguably more power than Edson Barboza, especially that switch kick, his leg kicks. I mean, who finishes guys with leg kicks but these two guys, Gaethje and Barboza? And not just once. It wasn't a fluke. I think Barboza did it twice, and Gaethje did it twice, maybe more than twice. So it's safe to say we were all getting ready to see a war starting off with leg kicks until somebody's leg broke, because Gaethje promised we were going to find out whose bones whose bones were stronger coming into the fight, which was just a scary thing to hear from a guy. If you're Edson Barboza, that's just a scary thing to me to hear your opponent say in an interview. Like I said, we are going to cover all the fights, but I like to start with the main card first, the main event, I should say, first, because it's better to do it that way. People people are more excited to hear about the news if they haven't already seen or heard the news of how the fight went down. I'm sure a lot of you guys, I'm so late with this video that I've already seen plenty of videos, and I'm hoping to get into one of your feeds and you like me and you like my analysis and you subscribe to me, because if you look at some of my other videos, I do a pretty good job at predicting. You know, this is my life. I bet on it. I sit and talk about it. I write content for websites about it. This is all that I do. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about GAETHJE and BARBOZA. We're going to get right into it. And in about 5 minutes into the round, the first leg kick was landed at the ankle by GAETHJE to Edson Barboza. Now, if you're Edson Barboza and leg kicks are one of your main weapons, and you get kicked first, it's got to do something to your psychology. It's kind of like being a wrestler and you're confident in your takedowns and your takedown defense, and the very first thing that happens is you get taken down. So the first leg kick came from Justin GAETHJE, and it was not answered. The second leg kick came from Justin GAETHJE, and it was a little higher. This one was at the knee, and that was when Barboza decided to answer with a leg kick of his own, but it was at GAETHJE's knee. GAETHJE even made mention that maybe he shouldn't have given him that idea. Now, one thing I think I forgot to point out in my predictions video is that Barboza, he has a 4 or 5 or maybe even a 6-inch reach advantage over GAETHJE. Is he going to use it? No. How do I know? Because he's never used it in the past. Okay, the jab, he's got one of the most technically perfect jabs that you will ever see. But he never uses it. The guy never uses his jab. As soon as he gets into a fight and his reflexes take over, he goes to the hook. He starts using his feet. I think if he would set some of that stuff up with a jab, he would have been a lot better off. Particularly in this fight. Now, this fight went so quick, there's not a whole lot to analyze. I mean, after those 2 leg kick exchanges, one thing I want to point out, though, is how improved a fighter GAETHJE has become. I feel like he probably would have won this fight anyway, okay? But based on his toughness and based on a lot of things, I had him beaten Alvarez. I had him beaten Poirier. Of course, he took losses to those because of his style. Okay, he still has the same style, but he did a couple of more smart things, and I wrote it down so I don't want to forget about it. It looked like after that first leg kick exchange, it looked like GAETHJE's leg kicks were felt by Barboza a little more than Bosa's leg kicks were felt by GAETHJE. If you ask me, Bosa didn't want anything to do with the leg kick game of GAETHJE. Maybe a few more leg kicks got exchanged at that point. But this is the point of the fight where I noticed personally the improvement in I don't know if I want to say the improvement in his fight IQ, because I think his fight IQ is there's no way to tell, because he fights with a certain style that most people would look at it as a low IQ, because all he is just a monster when he's in the cage. He likes to put on a show. But this time, he showed his brains, he showed his smarts, he showed his experience, because he was fighting a more experienced fighter, and after a few more leg kick exchanges, and I think that was just so that so that Barboza would stay active. But I know Gaethje's hurt worse than Barboza's did. Um, Gaethje, at that point, faked the leg kick, but then he fired a straight left hand to the midsection of Barboza so that he could drop his guard. And instead of, winging a punch at his face like he normally would, he actually grabbed the back of Barboza's leg. And it looked like, remember when GSP used to take guys down, he would almost go for just the back of the leg, like a single leg, but just grab a hold of the back of the knee so that it couldn't straighten out, and then use his left hand to kind of club him over the head at the same time pushing on him, and it would become a takedown. It looked like from the beginning that's what Gaethje was getting ready to do, but of course he on the break, he abandoned that, or Edson pushed off, or there was some kind of a break, and then as they broke, Gaethje fires a right hand that kind of grazed the temple of Edson Barboza. But it definitely made contact. Barboza definitely, because we all know if given the choice, Gaethje, he wants to strike. All right, he's got some of the most fun fights in the UFC. But there was a few more leg kick exchanges right after that, and because of those leg kick exchanges, and I think Bosa felt that he had Gaethje's guard low, or at least him thinking about those leg kicks. So he threw a naked kick, a naked high kick aimed directly for Gaethje's head. Gaethje blocked it perfectly. It didn't even move him. It didn't even phase him. And I think at that point, it had something to do with it had some adverse effect on the psychology of Barboza. When you whack a guy that hard, even if his glove goes up to his ear, the answer the phone defense. We saw when Derek Brunson tried to block Jacare Souza's kick, it went right through that and knocked him out. So Edson threw that high kick. It had little to no effect on Gaethje. Gaethje kept moving forward as usual. And as I said in my last video, Gaethje's being trained by Trevor Whitman. He started off at Grudge. Now I think he's at Elevation. Whatever it is, he's learning new tricks. He's dangerous. He's going to be the next champion. Mark my word about that one. You can take that one to the bank. Bet the farm on that one. I mean, this guy's going to be a champion, and I think he's going to defend that title a long time. He's going to be the face of the UFC. Everything that we wanted Conor to be, I think Gaethje really is, and he's going to be around a lot longer. Anywho, back to the fight, back to the reporting of this particular fight here. From that point, Gaethje started to implement what I think was the game plan from the beginning, which was back Barboza up against the cage any way you can. So I think he established he was a little more powerful, tougher, and he did that exactly. He backed up and held Barboza against the cage and tried to get some dirty boxing in there, tried to wear him down a little bit, it looked like. Anybody that's used to seeing Barboza fight knows that when he's in trouble or he gets hurt and he breaks and he's able to get away, he'll circle almost every single time to his left to kind of reset, get his feet in the right position to throw a kick. But if he would just circle and jab at the same time, it would be a whole different story. But he circles kind of slow for the speed that he possesses, and this time when they broke against the cage, he circled and he stayed as close to the cage as possible, and he made the same mistake Vic made. I don't know if he didn't watch that fight. I don't know if he thought he was too tall. But Gaethje located him as he was, you know, sliding out. He lowered his hands, raised his chin. Gaethje threw a really quick, um, I want to call it a right hook, but it was more like a jumping right hook. But man, did it hit Barboza on the button, because he was out cold. When he hit the ground, his arms were still up in the air as if to defend himself. I think he thought he was still standing, and that was it. As I said in my last video, as I predicted, we're going to see a backflip off the cage, and we certainly did. Gaethje backflipped off that cage. He had Philly rocking, okay? We love our sports in Philly, and now our Philadelphians, we have a new place in our heart for the highlight, Justin the Highlight Gaethje. So, beautiful fight. Well worth the price of admission, man. It was kind of quick, but I don't mind that. I mean, it was obvious Barboza wasn't going to be able to stand in there with this guy, and just a great fight. I'm happy that I got to see it, and I'm happy that I'm here to be part of watching Justin Gaethje and his career unfold. Gaethje gets the win. I think it was pretty interesting that he was a slight underdog coming into this fight. Barboza has a 20-6 record. He was the favorite, a -130 favorite. Gaethje coming into this fight, I believe, was number 8. And since then, he's risen 2 spots. So I just can't say, I just can't wait to see Gaethje fight again. No matter what, who, where, what, when, and how, whatever the opponent is, I can't wait to see him fight again. I think that he has learned a couple new tricks that's going to help to extend his career. I know he said he only had 5 fights or 4 fights left, whatever it was back in the day, but there's a lot out there for him to see. And I have an interesting opponent in mind, and I want to see what you guys think of it, but we're going to talk about that at the end of this video here. Now, on to the next. The next fight was the co-main event with David Branch versus Jack Hermansson. Now, I got this one wrong. All right, I'm not afraid to admit it when I'm wrong, but you can't blame me either, because not much of us, you know, Hermansson has a lot of fights outside of the U.S., so, you know, his fights in the cage, his last win, you know, it wasn't over a huge contender. This was the biggest fight in his career against number 5, David Branch. David Branch recently changed his training camp. I know he has a Renzo Gracie black belt in jiu-jitsu, right? So that was what kind of stuck out to me, because, you know, when I looked at all of Hermansson's fights, he's a ground and pound expert. He loves to get you down on the ground and finish you. And that's almost a perfect scenario for a Brazilian jiu-jitsu artist, an over-aggressive guy who likes to get things to the floor. Brazilian jiu-jitsu is what made me fall in love with this sport. You know, when Dan, the Beast Severn, was on top of Renzo Gracie, when he was on top of Royce Gracie, had him balled up into the cage in the corner in the bottom of the cage, and he was on top of him striking, landing strikes. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you see this big giant monster tap to this scrawny little guy, a 6 foot, barely 6 foot, and 165 pound soaking wet guy. And that just made me fall in love with the sport of MMA, because it's not always about strength. It's not always about who's bigger, although that has a lot to do with it. Um, but that day, he had a David versus Goliath-esque performance, and that's when I was hooked. Royce Gracie was my first favorite. So I have a lot of respect for Brazilian style jiu-jitsu, Japanese style jiu-jitsu, any kind of jiu-jitsu. So there was that. Though, that was one of my reasons behind predicting Branch to win that fight. But Hermansson had other plans, man. He came out super aggressive, and I remember DC making a comment about how he has this herky-jerky style. And I don't know why Dominic Cruz doesn't understand what a herky-jerky style is. He says, I just call it an in-and-out style. No, in-and-out is an in-and-out style. When you dart in and you dart out, like what Dominic Cruz does. Herky-jerky speaks to more of, what the hell is this guy going to do next? He's standing in this position where he should be firing a right hand, but he fires a left hand. He looks like he's going to throw a punch, and he goes for a double leg. I mean, herky-jerky means just that. Like, you don't know. You want to know what herky-jerky looks like? Look at some old tape of who was the guy that was missing that pectoral muscle? Can't think of his name off the top of my head, but I know some of you guys know who I'm talking about. Do me a favor, in the comments section, tell me who you think were the herky-jerkies of the UFC. God, I wish I could remember his name, but I mean, he fought for a title and everything. Bald-headed guy, but I mean, he was the king of herk and jerk. So I think he kind of confused Branch. Now there was no difference in their measurables. It kind of looked like Branch had a longer reach for some reason, because he looks like he's just long and lanky, and he's got a longer reach than just about everybody else out there. And it looked like he kind of tried to throw a jab and keep some distance from Hermansson, but literally within seconds, Hermansson had plans of his own. He got once he got his hands on David Branch and wrapped him up, took him to the. Actually, what happened was Branch, when they locked up, tried to throw a hip toss at him, but Hermansson's strong, all right? And not only did he not allow Branch to toss him over, but he countered it with his own hip toss, all right? Threw Branch over like he was just a sack of groceries, and landed on top of him. And Branch scrambled a bit to try to get up, and this was the beauty, this was the fight IQ of Jack Hermansson, because where he had his hand placement at that very moment, it looked like he was going to go for, I would say, a rear naked choke. Maybe take the back and go for a rear naked choke, because he had his left arm behind Branch's neck as they were getting up, and then he had his right arm up underneath Branch's left armpit. So I wasn't sure what he was trying to do, but it looked like he was going to take out that right arm as he got the back and use it for a rear naked choke and end the fight that way. What he did is something I never, ever in my history, thousands of fights watching, is he switched from that attack, making Branch the black belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu master of Renzo Gracie Academy, got him confused. At that moment, you looked at Branch, he had a bewildered look across his face, and where they ended up at the cage, he had to actually do almost a 180 to look for his corner, to look for Renzo Gracie to tell him what the hell to do. But Hermansson, before you could get a chance to even make contact with his coach, Hermansson already changed the position of his left hand, and he put it around in such a way that he went for the 360 choke. So I don't know if David Branch knew he was even going for a rear naked choke. I think he was looking to try to get some advice from the corner because he had no idea what was going on. No sweat because there was only 15, 20 seconds into the round or something like that. And he was able to land Jack Hermanson was able to land a beautiful, what we're now calling a 360 choke. It's where your arm is kind of dug into your body to get the leverage. Your right arm does basically nothing. And when you land on your back, your leg has something to do with it. But when you land on your back, all you have to do is pull your opponent over and land on your back, and that thing is in so tight. And just ask David Branch because he tapped in about 3 seconds after that. And I got to say, Hermanson, he's making a name for himself on the scene. And he looked pretty fired up after that fight. I don't know. It was really funny, his post-fight celebration, to see a guy, a well-spoken European, multilingual guy turn into such a savage like that, But it's got to feel pretty good to submit a black belt in Renzo Gracie Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's got to feel pretty good to submit that guy within 30 seconds of the round. So I can understand. I certainly would be celebrating myself. Then the next fight I'm going to cover was Josh Emmett versus Michael Johnson. Now, Michael Johnson's just come down. Michael Johnson was fighting at, what was it? He was fighting at 155, lightweight, and he's decided, with the traffic jam that's going on up there, Conor McGregor holding up held up the belt for so long, and now you've got Khabib who has the belt, and because he's not even scheduled to fight till September after Ramadan. So a lot of guys are trying their luck. They're going up in weight and they're going down in weight. And a lot of these guys are finding much better luck. Gastelum, Amanda Nunes, Pettis, for example. So coming up in weight might not be a bad thing, all right? Going down in weight, we still have yet. The jury's still out on that, okay? Because it's kind of like a bully technique, you want to be bigger than the guy that you're fighting, so you lose your fat kind of thing, but you also lose your hydration, Your brain is surrounded by water, okay? So when you dehydrate yourself and you lose that water, your brain shakes around. There's a lot of science that still needs to be looked at as far as cutting weight. I think ONE FC does it the best with the hydration test along with everything. That's why you see guys like Ben Askren, who's now fighting at welterweight at 170, but welterweight at ONE FC was 185. And maybe a lot of you guys don't know that, but that's one of Ben Askren's secrets, is that he's been fighting guys 15, 20 pounds heavier than him his entire career, and still he's undefeated. Now, I don't mean to bring up his name during this fight, because this was a fantastic fight for a lot of reasons. I forgot to mention something about the Edson Barboza fight, Edson Barboza versus Justin Gaethje fight, and it was important because all the analyzing that I did about that fight, and then I must have watched 40 fights on each of those guys. I watched Michael Johnson fight Gaethje, so I know he's tough. I know he hits hard. He knocked out Dustin Poirier at 155, who's just now getting ready to fight for a championship. And he's got experience. He's one of the more experienced, way more experienced than Josh Emmett. And I think in my breakdown in my last video, I talked about his overall speed. He was going to be the faster fighter, and he was. His footwork was faster, his jabs were faster, but he had no power, okay? Or at least nothing that affected Josh Emmett. And that was a question I had about Josh Emmett coming into this fight. The guy took a beating from Jeremy Stephens that a lot of people don't come back from. He had face surgery, 2 orbital bones broken, a steel plate put in his face. Doctor's orders were for him to stay out of training for 1.5 years. A year later, He's back in a fight with a guy who has an established resume, and now a fast, powerful guy who has now dropped his weight. So an already small Josh Emmett for his weight class, I think that was cojones beyond all cojones for him to even take the fight in the first place. He must have saw something we weren't seeing. So the first round was just like what we thought it was going to be. It was a lot of Michael Johnson using his range, not allowing Emmett to get in. Yeah, again, he is faster than Emmett in a lot of different, in most of the aspects of the game. And it showed in that first round. He just completely tagged him up. I don't even know if Josh got a punch in on him. Let me check the notes, but I'm sure he got some kind of a punch in on him here. This was an interesting fight. Yeah, like I said, or from the famous words of Wonder Boy, he was piecing him up, man. He just kept piecing him up, and you could see the confidence growing in Michael Johnson. The more he kept tagging Josh Emmett, the more and the more punches he dodged or slipped from Emmett, or even took. Because I do remember in the first round, I think he took a straight right or a hook or something like that to the face, and after he learned, he got his rhythm a little bit, he was able to get a straight punch through, but it didn't really seem to affect Michael Johnson, which I don't know if it landed flush or not, but it certainly helped to increase the confidence of Michael, of MJ, because he started to become more aggressive towards the end of that round. I mean, it was obvious. MJ was just landing more, but with a lot less effect, because when JE did land, you could tell it was just doing more damage, just like kind of how when GAETHJE was fighting BARBOZA in the main event. You could just tell that the punches coming from MJ weren't really having that much of an effect on Emmett, but when Emmett made contact, MJ felt it. And so that's where things kind of went going. I think, in that round, while MJ was doing his thing, all Emmett was trying to do was to find a way inside. To get off that combo. Now Michael Johnson is faster all over, but Josh Emmett has the faster combinations. Okay, I mean, he throws fast combinations. He'll put out 2 punches before you can blink an eye. Okay, so all he needs to do is get into his range. Okay, which is a small range. He's not a rangy fighter. Once he gets into that range, he's gonna look for a jab maybe, and then that cross, that overhand, or that uppercut. So the whole fight, he's really trying to look for that. And he was never able, he made contact with 1 or 2 punches, but he was never able to put his signature punch into it. The round ends, they both go to their corners. Now, I only got a chance to really listen to Michael Johnson's corner. I don't know what they were telling Josh Emmett, but he was clearly down that round. I know if I was in his corner, I would be telling Josh, look, you lost that round, I'm pretty sure. So we're going to have to step up the aggression in the next round. But what I did hear out of Michael Johnson's corner was, we want more of the same. You're tagging him up. More of the same. More footwork. More volume. Things like that. All right. Round 2. MJ looked good. Footwork. He had these awesome feints the entire fight that were just confusing the hell out of Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett in round 1 only went for 1 takedown. Okay? If you're Josh Emmett and you're out undersized like he was against MJ, I think that that's your best bet, is to go for the takedown. Even though you're a knockout artist, incidentally, he was mocked by Michael Jackson for being a knockout artist when the press called Josh Emmett a knockout artist. Michael Johnson kind of snickered in the press conference. I don't think he's going to snicker about that stuff no more. Because Josh Emmett, turns out, he's the Salvador Dali of knockout artistry. Because what he was able to do was eventually get inside. But round 2 kind of looked a lot like round 1. Okay? He was in and out. He was making it very difficult for Emmett to get in on him. MJ came out. You could tell his confidence level was like a 10. A fucking 10. All right? He definitely did up that volume. He opened up a small cut on Emmett, and he threw a high kick that was blocked, but Emmett felt that power, okay? That was like getting punched. MJ got a straight right. As an answer, MJ got a straight right, but as an answer to that strike from Emmett with one of his own. But you could just tell that when Emmett was able to, that particular punch definitely had an effect on MJ. MJ tried to like wave his finger or do something, smile at him or something to kind of. Anytime you see a fighter smile after getting punched, you know, it's to try to show the other fighter like, hey, haha, you may have tapped me or it didn't hurt or you missed or something like that. But if a fighter makes contact and the fighter that he made contact with laughs, that's a psychological thing. He got touched and it hurt, all right? But he's doing that because he doesn't want the opponent to know what's going on inside his head. A lot of you guys already know that, though. At 5:29, that was the time when that punch that I mentioned got through to MJ, and it did affect him. It had him thinking now at that point about the power that Josh Emmett really does have. You know, he felt a piece of it, you know, because he got caught. He didn't get caught flush, but he got caught. And from that point, he started to respect Josh Emmett just a little bit more. And I want to address something that Dom said. You know, that both of these guys are fast, but Michael Johnson might be a little bit faster. And he was right about that. But as I said, Michael Johnson's combos, Michael Johnson's punches are nowhere near. They're worlds slower than Josh Emmett. When Josh Emmett throws a combo, I mean, they come out faster than the speed of light, I think. And that also increases the power. Then there was some more back and forth. You know, Michael Johnson is doing his in and out thing, and Josh Emmett was faking a level change. But had he actually gone for some takedowns in round 1, you know, it might have affected things because, you know, Michael Johnson wasn't afraid of getting taken down. You know, he wasn't afraid of that threat. So as Emmett is making those level changes, Michael Johnson didn't really defend it. He was worried about defending his chin and his face. So he didn't really leave much of an opening for Emmett to get his signature punch through. But there was this one time when he did throw that signature punch and he missed. I think MJ felt the actual inertia or the power or the sound going by his face, because that was when he picked up his finger and he waved it at him like the old Dikembe Mutombo thing, not in my house type thing. But he knows damn well, had he got caught with that punch, Fight's over. Go home, pack it up. It's over. Okay? But he didn't. He continued to dance around, have more fun. His confidence level stayed high. He starts talking to Emmett. He starts laughing at Emmett. They were having, it looked like he was having some fun in there. It looked like he thought he had it in the bag, so to speak. But round ends. MJ came out, confidence out of 10, still taking shit, but still talking shit, not taking shit, but tagging Emmett at will. And at about 4 minutes left, Emmett almost caught him with a dangerous punch that barely missed MJ. MJ circled away, and again, he laughed at JE and said, as if to say, I guess, almost, motherfucker, or something to that effect. From watching on TV, I could see that was a serious shot that he dodged, and just the reaction of Michael Johnson, you knew it. So the whole time, Emmett did not lose face. He was, I'm sure his corner told him he lost that second round too. The corner men are not there to lie to you, and he was down. So this time, he had to. So round 3, he has to finish this fight. So he came out as aggressive as possible. He ate every shot that he slipped a couple, but he ate most of the shots that Michael Johnson threw at him, because Michael Johnson's just not that powerful in that division. And then at 3 minutes left, Emmett did catch MJ with a straight right that didn't seem to affect MJ. He was still darting in and out, tagging JE as you would expect, since he'd been successful. And he knew, I'm sure he knew he was winning on the scorecards. But toward the end, he became more aggressive, staying in the pocket. With one of the most dangerous guys to stay in the pocket with. And then it happened. The whole fight changed. All the work, the 8 to 12 weeks of training camp that Michael Johnson had to put into this. The weight cut, and I'm sure that was harder now at 145 than it was for him at 155. He's been through a lot lately, but he really felt he had this one in the bag, and he got really aggressive, staying in the pocket and threw more power shots. MJ's a southpaw, so what he did is he threw this jab, okay, which was basic, with his right hand, he threw a jab, and since he's a southpaw, and that was it. JE steps outside his lead leg, feints a takedown, believe it or not, even though it wasn't effective the whole fight. It did just enough to lower Michael Johnson's hands for Emmett to put his signature, and he didn't, it wasn't a combination. It was just an overhand right that landed right on the button. Johnson was out before he hit the ground. Beautiful performance by Josh Emmett. I will watch every single fight Josh Emmett ever has for the rest of his career. Just an awesome fight. I don't know what else to say. I told you MJ mocked the press for calling him a knockout artist, and Michael Johnson's not the best guy with words. When him and Justin Gaethje were supposed to fight, and Conor McGregor started the trash talk era, and Michael Johnson thought that that's what he was supposed to do. But you got to have some kind of wit, you got to have some kind of intelligence, and when you tell a guy you don't eat little pieces of shit, you eat your pieces of shit whole, it shows your level of wit. So he went back to his old ways, and just being a worker, a blue collar worker, fighter, and I think he needed this fight, and Josh Emmett had other plans, man. Josh needed this fight too. He's an up and comer, and I think we're going to see him wearing a 45. I think we're going to see him wearing the belt at 45 one of these days. You know, Max Holloway. He's been one of the most dominant champions since Jose Aldo. He currently has the belt, and as I talked about before, Dustin Poirier has a championship fight at 55. Well, that's with the current 45 champ, Max Holloway. So it's going to be interesting. I think if Max Holloway does take the 55 belt, I think that's might just be the last time we see him in at featherweight. Remember, he started in the UFC at 21 years old. Your physiology is different. He's getting denser. He's getting bigger as time goes on. And it's hard. The weight cut, you know that when the weight cuts get harder and harder and harder. And look at Dustin Poirier. He was like his first or second fight, and he submitted him. He submitted Max Holloway early in his career. But if you look at those two, both of them, they just look completely different fighters. Yeah, Dustin has a bald head at the time, and he looks a little more like a gangster or something like that. But just their bodies, just the way that they looked. They were skinnier. They were smaller. Max looked like a kid. All right. These guys, if you look at them today, I might be able to get a side by side in here pretty soon, if I can get the editing down. But it's night and day, man. These are two different guys, and it's going to be just an interesting fight. So if and it's not a big if, I think he has a very good chance at getting the belt. You know, in this interim fight, you know, because Dustin doesn't have the belt, so it's an interim fight. So whoever wins this fight gets the belt, right? So if he does get the belt, incidentally, that's the same way Jose Aldo got the belt, or he even less. He was given the belt when the WEC was merged with the UFC. So and he held it and defended it for a very long time. I think it was like 11 years or something like that, right? Max hasn't defended it that long, but he has fought Jose Aldo, that guy, and he finished him twice. So there's no question. He is the 145-pound champ, and in my eyes, the king. Just because Jose Aldo has more defenses and things like that. This sport changes faster than any other sport I've ever seen. The shelf lives of fighters are smaller. You know, there's no more real styles. You know, you don't have a guy who's a karate specialist like a Lyoto Machida versus like a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy or a wrestler. You know, the new breed are trained specifically for MMA. Anything can happen in a fight, and these guys are trained for it. All right. So great win by Josh Emmett. It's a little disheartening to see Michael Johnson lose, but maybe he'll start eating his shit piece by piece, and he won't eat it whole anymore. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens next. But let's get into the next, which I think was, I don't know, maybe the third fight on the card. One of my favorite fighters, one of my favorite female fighters, Michelle, the Karate Hottie Watterson, versus, I know I'm going to butcher this, Karolina Kovakovic. I call her KK. So if you hear me say KK throughout this, you know who I'm referring to. Now, Watterson came in at a plus 130 underdog. All right? I think that's very interesting. She's 16-6. Kowalczyk was a minus 150 favorite. All right, she's 13-3. This was a very important match for the strawweight division because you know Rose has the belt in that division, But you got Nina Ansaroff coming up. You know, you've got Michelle Watterson, who's looked tougher than ever. Let's not forget about Jessica Andrade, who will probably win Knockout of the Year award over Carolina Kowalkiewicz, which brings me to my next point. I was a little afraid of Josh Emmons' performance because of his injuries. Um, but once he took a couple punches to the face and he knew he was okay, he wasn't, he got that confidence back really, really quick. A lot of fighters don't do that. A lot of fighters who go through what he went through or get knocked out the way that KK got knocked out by Jessica Andrade, the chin, don't the beard comes off. The chin don't stay the same. You know what I mean? So that's what I was kind of dwelling on for KK because again, when you look at the body of work, when you look at the resumes, the clinch work that KK has and she's good at, she could have been considered Watterson's kryptonite. You know what I mean? She's a very clinchy, very dirty boxing. She's a different fighter, a good fighter, great fighter. But as I said in my predictions video on this, Michelle just had a different look in her eye. I don't know when she got with Jackson Wink. How long ago it was. It was a while ago, but I did see the influence in the cage. I can't overstate the respect that I have for that camp. For Jackson Wink. They're an amazing. They've turned out amazing. The list of UFC fighters alone is an amazing list of fighters with Cowboy, Mike Perry, John Jones. I mean, the list goes on, and then that's not even counting the amateurs. So, like I said, Jackson Wink, I think, had a lot to do with this because you saw the oblique kicks that he's famous for teaching. Michelle came out with all the confidence in the world. Uncharacteristically, of course, because she usually kind of likes to stay on the outside and counter the aggressor. But in this fight, it looked like she was moving forward all the time and attacking first. Now, she got behind. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention is she got behind a really decent jab. Okay, you're always going to hear me talk about this because I'm a former boxer. The jab is the most underused tool in MMA today. Guys, anybody, hear me. Use your jab. Set up things with your jab. Stop throwing your power punches first. Get a jab, at least one. Double up, triple up, and then throw your power. Well, that's what Michelle Watterson was doing. It just so happens that she can jab with her feet. She has a naked kick that comes from just straight from the floor, either with her lead leg or her back leg. That's just like a freaking jab, So she's got 4 jabs, and one you don't see coming to the chin, to the bottom of your chin. So she was pushing forward with that the whole time, and I don't think that KK had the confidence in her chin after what happened with Jessica Andrade. You know how it looked like Josh Emmett was able to not have any kind of problems. He didn't seem to lose any confidence in his chin, but he had to have, taking a year off and hearing all that bad news. I mean, the psychological effect that would have to do to somebody is just awful, but back to this fight. I think that she was a little hesitant and more defensive because she didn't have the confidence in her chin. She didn't want to gain the confidence in her chin, and I think going up against one of the, a high volume striker with some power, that like Michelle Waterson, was just the worst fight to put her in out the gate. But all respect to her. And it kind of weirded me out when Bruce Buffer was announcing the fighters. That tends to get you excited. It tends to get your blood pumping. It tends to get you going. You're about to fight in 30 seconds or less. And if you notice, KK was just kind of leaning against the cage, like she wasn't about to be the one fighting, like she was going to be the one watching the fight or something like that. Just a weird mood she seemed to be in. Which didn't go very well because the mood that Michelle Waterson was in looked like one of a murderous psychopath. All right, she's so good with striking and her karate attacks. I guess that KK's KK's game plan, because she's so good at it, is the clinch. But according to my notes that I'm trying to find it here, she didn't even get the clinch until it was in the first round. But she didn't get the clinch till less than a minute left in the round. So when she finally got that clinch with less than a minute, okay, in the round, what's that tell you? I didn't see her look up at the clock, but I kind of got the feeling that she was gonna, once she got that clinch in the final minute, that she was gonna try and keep it there and just kind of wait out that round and kind of see what happens, because she just didn't have an answer for the attacks that were just coming out of one of the most high volume strikers in MMA today. I think she was trying to find timing and was just absolutely unable to establish that. She was trying to find her range. She was absolutely unable to establish that. So, and I'm sure Michelle Waterson was told to try to avoid the clinch at all costs. So with that being said, knowing that I'm sure she was coached to try to stay out of that clinch, in that final minute when KK got her against the fence and they were landing some insignificant inside dirty boxing strikes, on that final break, Michelle was able to land a pretty nasty elbow on the way out to end the round. KK, during that round though, KK had a little success with some leg kicks, but they were mostly checked or countered or slipped, and the round ended. Now, apparently, according to, I think it was Anik calling the fight, KK, he mentioned KK's corner gave her some good advice, which was take advantage of those naked kicks. Whenever Michelle throws a naked kick, not set up a naked kick, just kicks you, to take advantage of that and counter. Okay. But Michelle Waterson, round two, she kept that rhythm. She kept it going and even added more weapons. She started using that oblique kick, that signature Jackson Wink, used mostly with success by John Jones.
I mean, there's even been talk about making it an illegal strike, but she landed it. Then KK, 3 minutes into the round, lands a clean right down the middle, but about 5 seconds later, Michelle Waterson answers with a equally as strong um, right. KK basically during that whole round, during that whole last round, was in chase mode. She knew she was down, so she had to get the finish, and Michelle knew that. So she was in chase mode, and that's the wheelhouse for Michelle Waterson. That's what karate does. It's more of a defensive art. So if somebody is attacking you, um, you're able to fend off the attack. So basically what she did was just snipe away. Every time Carolina came in, she would snipe her. Whether it was a kick, whether it was a punch. Um, Now there was I think in the first round, or I'm sorry, in the second round, there was. Let me check my notes. Yeah, yeah. In the second rounds with 27 seconds left, this is what I like about Michelle. She was trying to finish the entire fight. She was looking for the finish. Okay, she doesn't have a lot of power, which is why she doesn't get a lot of finishes. But or at least not that many finishes. And I knew she wasn't going to finish this one unless Andrade knocked 80% of Carolina's chin off. She threw that 360 wheel kick, a la Barboza, with 27 seconds left in the second round. And then KK finally in the basically middle of the third round, she finally got that clinch by catching a kick that she was looking for all fight. This was cool because Michelle Waterson reversed it with a judo type hip throw and landed on top of her head. Made KK land right on her head. Um, and then from there, that was at 2:23 left. He basically ended it with with the way they ended up after she hip tossed her. And the position was KK was on her back, and Waterson was inside control, and Waterson started landing some pretty vicious elbows. I mean, vicious for her, and some significant bows and some, some knees to the body while she was there. With 23 seconds left, she went for a great armbar. Okay, softened her up with the elbows and the midsection attack, and threw her off and jumped up and grabbed a hold of the armbar and grabbed it great. KK, of course, this is the women's division, so women are just naturally more flexible. They're harder to get stuff like that on. It was in the third round, so there was some sweat going on. But she didn't slide out of it. She just basically hyperextended her elbow, and they train you to turn a certain way to get out of the armbar. But kudos for her, you know. She got out of that armbar because that would have been a finish for Michelle Waterson, and she really could have used that. But it was a great way to end the round. Um, And then that's the way the round ended, was Michelle trying to get that armbar off, and that leaves a good impression on the judges for the decision. Um, Waterson got two for two on takedowns. This obviously was the biggest win of Michelle Waterson's career. And she called out the winner of Andrade and the champion Rose Namajunas. Now, how do I feel about that? I think it's a little too early, you know. And that's everybody's thought, but her defense is she's been in the top 10 the longest. But when you're in the top 10 of a weight class that has maybe 20 fighters, doesn't really say a whole lot. Now, if you're in the welterweight division, in the men's division, where there's 75 fighters and you're in the top 10, that says something, and you're in there for a long time. And you'll eventually, it's easier to get a shot that way, when there's less people in your division. So it was a good call out. I mean, if I was her, I would call, life is short. This career is a short career, just because of the way it is. So I can't blame her for calling her out, and I wouldn't hate to see it happen. But I don't think she's quite earned it yet. I think she should. We definitely got to wait to see what happens between Rose and Andrade, because I'm scared of him, Andrade, and I'm a full-grown man. That knockout she put on KK was just devastating. I've never seen, aside from Nunes, a woman with that kind of power, And even Nunes is bigger. Nunes is almost the size of a man. This chick is 100. This is straw weight we're talking about here, 115 pounds, and that was just. I mean, she generated power I never saw come from a girl at that weight class. She must have been punching a punching bag since she's 3 years old. I don't know, but that was the most powerful thing I'd ever seen come out of the women's division. The most powerful attack I'd ever seen come out of the women's division. So it's a big question now. I know Rose took out Joanna Jędrzejczyk, or whatever her name is, and then beat her in the rematch. So Rose has proven herself as a legitimate champion. Okay, but like I said, this is the fastest moving sport that there is, and it moves fast. All right, and the girls division, it's really hard to kind of judge because it's so young, and these girls are it's a smaller division, so that they're seeing each other a lot. I would say it depends on. I'm gonna reserve it until I see who wins out of Rose and Andrade. Now, if Rose wins, obviously, Andrade would be someone Michelle would have to go through in order to get the title shot. But then there's Nina Ansaroff. There's still Joanna Jędrzejczyk lurking around in there. The Boogie Woman. You never know when she's going to show up. And that would be a good fight. I'd like to see Michelle Waterson, two strikers go at it like that. Just a great fight. I'm a huge fan, not just because she's absolutely drop dead gorgeous, but she's a single mom. Me coming from a single mom home, I mean, it's just an emotional thing for me to see her doing so well. Fight mom and all this stuff. I think she'd make a great champion. She's so attractive, both physically and in personality, that she's only going to help the sport grow, right? Rose doesn't have that personality. Okay, I love her because I've been watching her since The Ultimate Fighter. I know a lot about Rose, but it's tough, man. If those two were in the cage together, I would have to pick Rose, just from what I see now. But I have seen every time Michelle gets into the ring, she gets better and better and better and better. And you've got her with Jackson Wink, training her, and you got Rose Namajunas, whatever. Why are these girls' names so damn hard to pronounce? She's being trained by what's his name, Trevor Whitman, the same guy that's trained Justin Gaethje in Team Elevation. There's another good fighter out of there that's new to the scene. I can't think of his name right now, but he knocked out Juicy J Arosa in the prelims about 3 weeks ago. God, I wish I could remember his name. I know you fans do. If any of the 6 of you that are watching this, if you can remember, just put it in the comments down there for me. But not to tune my own horn or anything, but I did basically call this fight exactly correct. I said Michelle Waterson was going to win by decision, being the underdog and everything. I don't know how she was one of the bigger underdogs of the night. And that is that. That brings us to our next fight, which was the biggest underdog in the fight that we're going to talk about. And that one was Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Paul the Bear Jew Craig. And I got to agree, there was a tweet sent out by Alan Jubain. I got to agree, this was the weirdest fight, and a fight with a very little, if any, IQ throughout the fight. And that's not Kennedy's fault. I mean, he's new to the scene. He's physically gifted. He's in the lightweight division. He's long, and he seems to be knocking people out quite a bit. So, and in this fight between him and Paul Craig, he actually had a 7-inch reach advantage. 7-inch reach advantage. And he was 2 inches taller. But what I liked was when Paul Craig was brought that particular fact in his interview, he said, "Oh, that just gives me more limbs to grab a hold on." But it's confusing because he represents himself as a kung fu fighter, okay? So, but when you look at his UFC record, he's got an armbar finish with 30 seconds left. I forget the guy's name, but I think it was his last fight. And that's basically the way this fight went. I mean, he got the shit beat out of him the entire time. Well, maybe not. Maybe on the feet. That's why this fight was so weird. When they were on the feet, given this reach advantage, you would have thought that like Kennedy was going to just run over him, you know. And I think that was on Paul Craig's mind, which is why he went for so many takedowns. I think he went for 18 takedowns and got 1 or 2 throughout the whole entire fight. But on the third round, you know, the tough. You got to give it to Paul Craig for being tough. It's another example of what being tough can mean in a fight. Gaethje showed it in this card, and Paul Craig sure as hell showed it in this card because all he did was take a beating the entire time. Okay, he got elbowed, he got punched, he got hooked, he got headlocked, and he got out of it all. He figured out a way to make it through each and every single round. Kind of a boring fight, to be honest with you, until the very end. Craig was 10-2 coming into this fight. And like I said, he's introduced as a kung fu fighter, but so far, the only thing he's put on display is some amazing Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He did shoot for a couple. He shot for those 18 takedowns that I talked about, and took a couple knees at the same time, and still kept going for the takedowns. That's why I said, you know, he's you know, he's pretty tough. To my surprise, they were kind of even in terms of significant strikes landed, but Kennedy seemed to be doing a little more damage. But oh, here's the stat. Paul Craig was 1 for 12 on takedowns. 1 for 12 on takedowns. Now, although Kennedy seemed to be doing a bit more damage, like most fighters with long limbs, he's going to reach out to gauge the distance open-handed, a la John Jones with the fingers out. So I think he poked Paul Craig 3 times. Paul Craig's eye even started to bleed from one of them. Again, another testament to how tough he is. The ref ultimately took a point away from Kennedy for doing all those eye pokes. So you might think, you know, if you're PC, this is probably going to go to a decision, and most likely you'll be up on the scorecards. Maybe keep it standing since he wasn't doing so bad, but throwing all logic out the window, he continued to go to that well and try to take Kennedy down, which were stuffed and unsuccessful, giving a real bad look to the judges in the final round. In fact, they were so bad, Paul Craig ended up in they were so bad that that I remember a commentator making mention of maybe he should try something else. But finally, third round, he ended up getting the takedown. I think at that point, he was now 2 for about 18 takedowns. That was where I got that first stat. But when he got that takedown, he immediately looked for the arm bar. He used his knee to kind of get into a position, or he used his knee to get into a triangle position to work on an arm bar, on a laying arm bar, which Kennedy's strength, he was able to jump up, kind of stand up and shake out of it. And kudos for the tenacity of Paul Craig, or maybe he was just out of ideas and beaten half to death and not thinking straight. He went for another takedown, but guess what? This one worked. He swept out the back, got the triangle. That same sweep, he got it into the triangle. Then Kennedy tried to defend this by rolling. Remember how I said to defend the armbar, you got to roll a certain way? Well, you don't roll over. You don't roll over the top. You only get stuck in the armbar worse, and that's exactly what happened. Kennedy tried to defend by rolling over, and when he did, he just dug his arm deeper in tighter, and before he even rotated over, he was already tapping. I believe the elbow, when he turned him over like that, it hyperextended that elbow even more, and the pain was just unbearable, and so he tapped. It was a beautiful display of jiu-jitsu, a come from behind, a Hail Mary, whatever you want to call it. Wasn't the greatest fight, but it was well worth watching. Okay, if you're a fight fan, most people be bored by a fight like that. But that surprise ending, I like the twist. I like the surprise endings, because my money was on Kennedy. If you look at my predictions video, I had Kennedy all day. But don't sleep on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. that's the lesson today. That's the lesson Kennedy learned, and he's still got a very promising career. I think more promising career than Paul Craig. I don't expect to see Paul Craig in the UFC after 2019. I mean, he's done his thing. He's a great guy, but you know, he's John Jones is the champ of that division. Kennedy has the physical tools to possibly challenge John Jones. Um, so I expect a lot of great things out of this. Yeah, Kennedy lost, but it's one of those losses that you take that I know he learned a lot from. Don't be too confident. Don't go. You don't want to be too confident. You don't want to overextend yourself. You always want to be thinking defensively, and I don't think that's what he did in the third round. I think being up on the cards and everything, I think he went for the finish and got finished, and that's the lesson that he learned. Um, and that's enough. On to the first fight of the card, but the last fight I'm going to cover. I like to go to the main events, the co-main events, and then everything down because, sometimes these things take a while. Some people like to listen to only the main events and things like that. But just because this was the first fight on the card, that tends to make people think it's going to be the least exciting. But what we had here was an ex-World Series of Fighting. Now, he wasn't a champion like Justin Gaethje, but Marlon Moraes comes from World Series of Fighting. He's no joke. Um, it is a quality promotion, and that's where he came from. And he's a three-time Muay Thai kickboxing champion in Brazil. He is a five-time kickboxing champion in the International Kickboxing Association. So he is a highly decorated kickboxing, and safe to say he's a striker. However, he's Brazilian, so he's got to have the jiu-jitsu in his blood, and he's with Team Nogueira. I know he's teaching him some jiu-jitsu, but I've never seen Moraes use jiu-jitsu. I haven't watched too many of his fights, but I certainly haven't seen him use any jiu-jitsu whatsoever, except for getting submitted once in a jiu-jitsu move in one of his fights in World Series of Fighting. I expect a lot of good things out of him in the future, but Sadiq Yusuf, part of the Nigerian Express, that the UFC right now is getting taken over by the Nigerians. I don't know if you noticed this, but you got Kamaru Usman. I don't know. It's hard to think off the top of my head, but there's a lot of Nigerians that are now making a lot of noise. And I know Francis Ngannou's from Cameroon, but that's like a neighbor or something. Like, you might as well say he's Nigerian. The Africans are coming, and they're great wrestlers, decent strikers, strong cardio, and Sadiq is no different. I watched a lot of his fights. He's a finisher. He finished, I think, 5 out of 6 fights before turning pro. And his first day, and then he got on the Contender Series, Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, knocked him out. And on his debut in the UFC, I'm trying to think of the guy who it was. He didn't. It was a TKO, but he finished him up against the cage with punches. Right? The guy's a finisher, and he's young. He's 25 years old. He's got a good story. I think he's well-rounded. He has 7. He's not on Wikipedia, so it's not in inches, it's in centimeters. But but when I did the math, I want to say it is a 69-inch reach. Okay. Um, he trains with Team Lloyd Irvin out of Maryland, and they're not a well-known camp, but as far as like the promotions, the major promotions go, but he is training currently um, Tony Martin, and Tony Martin has been winning every single fight that he's been in. He's a submission artist. He's knocked some people out. He's slowly becoming one of my favorite fighters. He's a great fighter. So be on the lookout for more guys coming out of this training camp. Sadiq Youssef, I got to give him credit. When he came out blazing. He didn't come out, trying to gauge rhythm or range or anything like that. He would throw out a light attack and then a finisher. He'd throw a hard right punch or a head kick. He was always trying to finish the entire fight. Oh, and not to mention, I like the kid's jab. Steve's got that jab, man. He threw a lot of jabs and a lot of calf kicks, which is, I don't know, you can consider that an MMA version of a jab because it can set you up for a lot of things, do a little tiny bit of damage. And like I said, he would always try to follow up with those power shots and a few elbows that missed or grazed. But he was definitely the aggressor. First round, he did get a powerful right to the body of Marias. And Marias felt it. Marias wanted nothing to do with that. So he got on his bicycle and he was, since Sadiq is the more aggressive forward fighter, it gave Marias the ability to get on his bike and try to maybe take advantage of his aggressiveness and counter him or something like that. I don't know why, but Marias came in as a slight underdog, all right? With all his experience, titles that he's won, I mean, he should have been a minus 150, I would have thought. You know what I mean? But it turns out his style, in my opinion, just seemed to be a bad matchup. He seems slower, definitely less powerful. That's another thing Sadiq has for the 45-pounders. All you 45-pounders that are listening to this, which is probably nobody, look out for the power of Super Sadiq Youssef, because the guy is powerful. I mean, look at his records. TKOs, KOs, at 45. That's not easy to do. It was a very tactical first round. Marias got some good shots in the second round. He landed a spinning back kick to the always moving forward. But it was a midsection, back kick. So didn't really do much damage. But he did hold enough power to hold Sadiq against the cage for a little bit, but Sadiq turned that around. This fight was basically the story of two fighters. One who's new to the scene, and Sadiq Youssef, coming from the Contender, turned pro in 2016. His first pro fight was against Chucka Willis, who is not so well known, but he's a very, very dangerous opponent. Now, the third round in this fight was the most exciting, all right? Marias seemed to know he was down here, so he came out way more aggressive. He landed a head kick and some good shots, but they weren't flush. It didn't definitely hit. And Sadiq is tough. Sadiq, after an exchange, managed to get full mount, landed great strikes, almost finished him, but round three, Marias was just sweaty enough and smart and escaped a rear I think it was a rear naked choke. And I think Sadiq cardio and his strength faded a little bit in that third round. I didn't see Marias fade at all. Sadiq, if there's anything he needs to work on, it's that cardio, because you're not going 5 rounds looking the way you did in the third round here, all right? And you're going to be champion. If you want to be champion, and I think you're going to be champion, you need to figure that out. You need to get your cardio up. I don't know. Maybe join Team Elevation. Get into a training program where you're at a high elevation and you can learn to use your body or get one of those training masks so that your body can get used to exerting itself with less oxygen. And that's what'll help you build endurance and some other things that I probably don't know, definitely don't know. Overall, I was incredibly impressed with the composure of Sadiq going into this. I expect a lot of great things out of him. He faced adversity in that first fight that he was in. I mean, his brother died. I don't know if it was the day before, but it was within days before his first finish in the UFC. Dealing with they say that fighting is 75% mental. That's not bullshit. That's real, okay? So he showed a lot of mental toughness there. So I expect to see, when the going gets tough in the ring, or I'm sorry, in the octagon, I don't expect it to be a thing for him. I expect him to rise to that occasion. And what I really liked about this is his attitude. He took this fight, according to his post-fight interview, he took the fight with Marias because Marias is the only one that was willing to take a fight with him, all right, let me say this again. He was the best striker, and we're talking about a 5-time champion, the best striker that Sadiq could find as an opponent. He sought out the best striker that would take a fight with him. So what does he do at the end of this? After beating the best striker that would take a fight against him, he called out Kron Gracie. Now, if you don't know who Kron Gracie is, he is Royce Gracie's nephew. Royce's brother, his first name slips me now because... Hi, baby.
Hi.
His first name slips me now just a little bit, but he's bigger. He's just a stronger BJJ artist, and that is Kron's dad. So Royce Gracie's older brother is Kron Gracie's dad. Now, Kron just got into the UFC. I think he's undefeated right now. But I just like the attitude of Sadiq. He just wants to try his skills and his style of fighting and test it against people with other types of skills or other types of styles. He wants to be the most... It seems to me that he wants to be the most well-rounded fighter that he could be. And he's another one that I see becoming a champion, or at least in the fight. And that's at the 145.
So, again, we're waiting to see what happens. Do I see him beating Max Holloway? Not right now. He could. Do I see Marias beating Holloway? Not in a million years. Okay. So it really depends on what happens between Holloway and Poirier, because it's my thought, it's my feeling that Holloway is going to, once he gets the belt, or if he wins and he gets that belt, he'll stay at 155. He might even not win the belt and decide to move up to 155 because he likes his physiology at that point. Who knows? But, or Sadiq sure could gain some weight, I don't think he could lose some weight because he's probably got a 6. If I had to guess, he's probably got a 7 or an 8% body fat ratio. So he's not losing any more fat. He'd have to lose muscle to go down. So maybe he wants to work out some more, and that'll of course slow you down, but it'll get you up to the next. But who knows? Who knows? We're gonna see. But it's gonna be very interesting. I promise. Follow Sadiq Yusuf. His career. He's gonna be exciting. Every fight is gonna be an exciting fight from him. And that's it for the show, ladies and gentlemen. Basically, this is usually the time. This show ran on a long time, so I can't really get into some of the stuff that I wanted to get into. The whole MMA world seems to be a little bit mad about the call out from his name escapes me. Justin Gaethje wins in spectacular fashion, and in the interview, post-fight interview with Paul Felder. That's right, Paul Felder, another one of my boys, Philly native. I love his fighting style, but I don't agree with him calling for fights or calling out fighters when he's got the suit and tie on and the microphone in his hand. I think he needs to learn how to change hats. You know what I mean? It's going to do him better at fighting, and it's going to make him better at fighting, and it's going to make him a better announcer. Okay? I don't know if you saw his tweet, but wasn't very nice. I mean, he said everybody that didn't like what he did can go fuck themselves or something to that effect. And I mean, at the end of the day, man, how would you like it if you just had a spectacular win, right? And the guy that's interviewing you is talking about a fight with you. This is the time for him to help you with your career, This is why I don't know why the UFC is hell-bent on making former fighters commentators and stuff like that. But you got to have, I miss Goldie, He's a real commentator. I don't know how it works. One's a commentator, one's a color commentator, one's a play-by-play, something like that or whatever. Be the play-by-play. Be the color. Be the commentator. But while you're there, don't be the fight manager. It's, I don't know. I love you, Paul, but I wish that didn't happen. It was I cringed a little bit when it happened. I don't think it's going to get you a fight with Gaethje. I mean, there's a lot of guys ahead of you at this point, maybe 3. So that's my feelings on that particular call out. One interesting thing that happened since this. Now, I wanted to bring up something because in the prelims, Ross Pearson and Des Green went at it. All right, Des Green's coming back from a horrible motorcycle accident where they thought he wasn't even going to walk again, much less fight again. And that was 2 years ago. So for him to get a win over Ross Pearson,
it's not just a win. I mean, it's not just a number in his win column. It must have done so much for him mentally. And it also did the same thing for Ross mentally too, I think, because last night, almost 6 days after the fight, I read his tweet that he's retiring. I don't have the tweet. Maybe my editor will put it up here for me, but it was just thanks for the fans, thanks for a wonderful career. I've had nothing but fun. But he retired, and I think that's notable. The prelims, the decisions. There was two decisions in the prelims that broke my heart. Well, one that broke my heart. There was two bad decisions, but one absolutely broke my heart. Something has got to be done about the judges. None of them, for whatever reason, no judge has any kind of fight experience. I don't think they've ever thrown a punch. I'm willing to bet they've taken a couple punches, but I don't think they know anything. I don't see how they can know what they're looking at. Okay? So we need to make a change, because that Borg fight, where Borg's opponent is slipping my mind, because it was all Borg. I mean, Borg was the aggressor. I think he slammed him 9 times. Okay, if you get slammed 9 times in any kind of match, a wrestling match, an MMA match, I think it's safe to say you lose. I mean, he was body slammed 9 times. He was obviously stronger. He never hurt Borg. Borg was never in trouble. Okay? But Borg had him in trouble a couple of times. I don't know. And not to mention Borg, I don't know if a lot of fans know what's going on, but Borg's just had a child recently, and it made him pull out of one of his fights. I think it was his Marlon Moraes fight, or even just one of the most important fights of his career. His child's health obviously took precedence over that, so he missed that fight and a possible huge payday. His son is dealing with a very, I can't get into it, a very serious medical condition. Okay? Take it from a father. When your kid's health is on the line, okay, and you've got an opponent in front of you that's basically standing in the way of your ability to help your distressed child take food off their table, there's no doubt in my mind that Borg went in there and gave it everything he got, from the 8 to 12 weeks of training to the 15 minutes of fighting. And to me, it showed. I watched that fight, and I expected to see Borg's hand raised at the end of it, and I think it's safe to say he was a little more surprised than I was, but very surprising, very surprising. It's sad that there's a saying like this, that never leave it in the judge's hands. But we should be able to. I mean, sometimes guys are big, can't finish each other. But one did more damage than the other one, and one was more technical, or one was had better car. Like, there's got to be judges there from a fighting background that can actually give a real score. Score it properly. So there's that. Another thing I wanted to talk about here that just came out was the bare knuckle thing. The bare knuckle thing happened over the weekend. I didn't watch it, but it was
with Jason Knight and Artem Lobov. You know, hyperbole is journalists' favorite thing. And they talked about how bloody, how vicious it was, people not getting paid enough, this, that, and the other thing. But the truth is, you know, I come from a boxing background. The reason that they wear those gloves is to protect your hands so that you can hit your opponent harder. Now, maybe you're not going to cut the face, but you're going to hit them hard enough to where that brain goes, you know, shaking around inside, all right? And boxers get hit in the head an average of like 500 times in a 10-round fight. So you telling me that bare knuckle boxing is more dangerous than boxing or even MMA is just an absolute ridiculous statement. Jason Knight is tough. Not an easy guy to knock out. I don't think he ever got knocked out when he was in the UFC. By the way, I didn't know he was out of the UFC until this. But it's my feeling that you know, we need more of it. You know, I liked it. You know, I liked the highlights. I liked the storylines. I think it was a little too dramatic. You know, the back and forth between Jason Knight and Artem Lobov, and then, you know, Malignaggi getting into it. Now they're scheduled to fight next. That I'm definitely going to look for, because something about Malignaggi's voice, I just want to. He may be right about some stuff or whatever, but I just hate hearing the guy talk. I mean, he just sounds. I mean, if somebody told me if somebody asked me what a wash-up sounds like, a washed-up fighter sounds like, I'll point him in Paulie's direction. The guy's got more excuses than Carter got liver pills. I don't know. I'm not a Conor McGregor fan. I used to be. I'm not a Conor McGregor fan anymore. So that has nothing to do with it. But I just wanted to make mention of that. Couple of other developments. Oh, Perry steps in to fight Oliveira in Fort Lauderdale. Okay, he was scheduled to fight somebody else, I think. That's why they used the word step in, but I didn't know who he was scheduled to fight. Now I'm on Bobby Green's Instagram, Bobby the King Green, who's still under contract with the UFC, one of the most exciting fighters they got. Let me ask my audience, what do you guys think? Who would you rather see Mike Platinum Perry fight? The Brazilian jiu-jitsu artist of Charles Oliveira, or one of the most exciting strikers, Bobby Green? I know I want Bobby Green versus Perry. Take my money, please, right now, type thing, all right? Vicente Luque just got matched up with somebody. Always love seeing him fight. Oh, and one of my favorite bits of news here, speaking of the 155 division, there was about 4 or 5 tweets came out on, from Tony Ferguson over the weekend. One of my favorite fighters. To me, he's still, at least the interim champ of that division. He'll give anybody a run for their money in that division. I mean, look what he did to Pettis in their last fight. Pettis broke his hand trying to punch Tony Ferguson, and then what happened? Pettis moves up a weight class and knocks out Wonder Boy. So this game is just so weird. But I know that Tony Ferguson has a great resume, and one thing I want to bring out here, if he comes back, all right, and he in relatively quick fashion, I don't know, the fight I really want to see, he's owed the fight with the champ. You know, obviously you're the interim. He's not the interim right now, but in my eyes, in a lot of people's eyes, he's the interim. He should get Khabib right away, but he won't. They're going to give him somebody in the meantime or something like that. But could you guys imagine Gaethje versus Tony Ferguson? Let me know what you think about that in the comments. Let me know what you think about the whole program. Let me know if you agree. Let me know if you disagree. Let me know if you like me. Let me know if you hate me. Whatever the deal is, hit the subscribe button. I'm going to make a prediction video every week, a results and reaction video every week right now as it stands. I'm looking at a Get to Know Your Fighter series I'm working on, and I hope to see you real soon. So until then, peace. Boom.